This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Hello and welcome to Broad Radio. I'm Jo Stanley, and my co-host today, oh my gosh, there are two amazing women either side of me. We have Jennifer Wong, who is comedian and writer, and I'm so thrilled that you've joined us here, Jen.
Thank you for having me, Jo.
I've got to tell you that you were on our show last year as a guest, and I thought to myself, when she's in Melbourne, I am going to snaffle her, and thanks for coming and letting me snaffle you.
Thank you for the graduation process. It's my honour.
And next to me here is Cecilia Ramsdale, who is a podcaster, voiceover artist and producer for Broad Radio. Mm-hmm. Sis, thanks for jumping on the mic today.
Oh, look, it's nothing like being the on the second, but no, I'm stepping up to the the graduation process. I feel like today is all about the graduation process.
Well, look, by way of explanation, Nellie Thomas was supposed to be sitting in that chair, but she's come down with a little bit of a bug. Mm-hmm. So you've come in at the last minute.
It's very exciting.
And look, you've spent plenty of years working in radio to get on that microphone.
Absolutely, and 62 episodes of Broad Radio out in the other room. So hopefully we can make this sing. And best wishes to Nellie, because nothing worse than coming down with a thing.
But you're well qualified to sit there.
Thank you.
To explain the fact that there are three people here, it's that I'm going to just snaffle off in halfway through the show because I'm a working parent, and as every working parent would know, sometimes you have to do parenty things, like I have to take my daughter to an appointment in just a little while. So I'm going to do half the show. I'm very passionate about flexible work arrangements. I think that inflexibility and rigid workplaces are the reason why women are often excluded from career opportunities. So this is a really big value for us at Broad Radio, and I am putting it into practice today. So here we are for half the show with me, and then I'm going to leave it to you.
I know.
Very qualified ladies to take over. I'm looking forward to that. It's an amazing show, though. We have Walkley Award winning author, activist, and now independent candidate for the Senate, Caro, joining us. The star of Cinderella, the stage show, Shubshri Kandiah, is joining us, and that's going to be an amazing conversation around how you can reimagine fairy tales to be more diverse. Amazing. And President of Women's Sport Australia, Dohrmann, is joining us to tell us about the Sports Bra Project, which is all about getting sports bras to women who need them. It's a ripper show, and it's all starting after this. Broad Radio is proudly supported by Chemist Warehouse. Chemist Warehouse, great savings every day. So as we always say, if you are watching live on Facebook or YouTube, do please share your comments or questions along the way. We would love to hear what you're thinking today as you join us in this conversation. And you can catch up on any previous episodes via our podcast, Broad Radio on the Go, wherever you get your podcasts. So here we are, ladies, the two of us, the three of us, the two of you. Jen, let's get to know you a little more. You were on the show last year because we loved your ABC iView show, Chopsticks or Fork, which is all about Chinese restaurants in Australia and country
regional Australia.
Absolutely loved that show. But you're also, you were here last night hosting an event for the Wheelers Centre.
Yes, with the Melbourne Comedy Festival. So Phil Wang from the UK has a new book out called Side Splitter, which is about his background being half Malaysian Chinese and half British, and how to be in two worlds at once. So we had a lovely conversation at the Wheeler Centre with the warmest audience in the world. You know how some audience participation questions can be a little bit more statement than question, whereas
Q&A.
Whereas these were all really thoughtful questions, and it was just such a lovely warm night, and such a nice thing to do at the start of the comedy festival as well, in Melbourne. 500 something shows this year. Isn't that incredible?
Oh, look, I think we're all a bit, we're catching up on 2 years of the drought of being around other people. But it's a bit intimidating, isn't it, being in the city and seeing so many people. You ready?
I'm ready to just dive into crowd surfing. I'm loving it so much. I will say I've had COVID, so I feel a little bit invincible.
Oh.
I'm in that 4 week.
You're in that mental state. Yeah.
I'm in the 4-week phase when you are actually immune, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do have an aura about you.
Yes. You've got the glow.
But you also were host of Bookish on the ABC. And so because you are interviewing authors, right, I'm going to guess that you have read 1,000 more books than I have in the last 5 years.
That's a lot of books, Jo.
I don't read many books. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. But I love to imagine you peruse. Are you a quick reader?
I'm not a quick reader. I'm a very slow reader. I think I luxuriate too much in the fact that someone's put together a beautiful sentence. So I like to make it last. So I'm not a very fast reader. I don't like to be hurried, and I certainly don't like to be hurried when someone has given me this beautiful gift of their imagination or their observations or things like that. So I'm probably one of the world's slowest readers.
Well, how do you manage then if you're hosting a
book show?
How do you get through them?
Well, it was only a short show every week, and so there were probably 2 or 3 books. And it was just doable because that was your job. And what a lovely job to have. Like I started working in bookshops when I was 14 years old, and the funnest thing was being able to borrow the books.
Preview.
That's part of your job. So you'd get to take all the books home. And I remember we set up the new bookshop in the neighborhood as part of working there. And I went home that day and I said, Mum, today I touched every single book in the fiction section. Like I've always just really loved the magical quality of, like in Gumby, how they go into the world. Like I feel like that.
Go into the page.
Yeah, you touch the cover and at the end of the book, you kind of close it again and go, thank you.
I
love that you've referenced Gumby. I hadn't thought about that for so long, but what a great show.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about you just mentioned the sentences that, you'll come across a sentence. Do you go back and reread that sentence? Sometimes if I'm reading a book and I find something and I go, oh, I love that, I actually fold the bottom of the page over so that I can come back.
Yeah, I do the top for the I want to remember this, and I do the bottom fold for the this is where I'm up to.
Oh, I do the reverse.
Yeah.
Top for where I'm up to, bottom for come back.
Yes.
I'm a lover of books too, but my mum's an English teacher, or was an English teacher, as was your father.
And amongst other subjects, yes.
So, you're raised loving the word and the language, but I guess I don't sort of make as much time for it, and I love how much respect you have for the creation of it. It's really beautiful. And Cec here records audiobooks.
That's amazing. You bring the book to life.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? I was working with a producer the other day on a book, and I said to him, for some reason I had a look at the Audible titles that I'd already worked on and the reviews. So the reviews are always interesting, right? But I didn't have one bad review when it came to the narrator, and I was like, I feel really chuffed with myself.
Wow. Congratulations.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of things that said the narrator was great or something along those lines. Not, in depth, but no one said this was terrible, that narrator was awful. And I thought, I feel really pleased with my efforts because it's a big responsibility to create a character that is likable and fits the story that you're reading.
Cecilia, I've got to ask, do you do voices when you do audiobooks?
Yeah,
Really?
I do.
For all the different characters?
Yes.
That is so fun.
Yeah, but I've realised they can't be like characters like an animation character. They just need to be, that's a man or that's a lady, and that's a different man to that man.
You can't do like Homer and Moe and Marge.
All the Simpsons books that you're narrating.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a parody and it's not a comedy. It's lovingly creating a voice for that.
Yeah, for that character. And you can't make them like hammy accented. No, they have to be culturally sensitive as well. So it's quite challenging, but it's really fulfilling. But you do feel like you're drowning in words sometimes, as I'm sure you do.
When Cec shared with me once that you have to read sometimes books that you might not choose to read
They
yourself.
might not vibe with you, yes.
So my favourite was when Cec shared with me that you had to say that she was bouncing on his erect penis.
Yeah.
Bouncing. That's quite a verb choice. What was going on with that?
Choose it.
I know. I'm not. No shade on you.
No. And that was like the first page. So that one was interesting. Yeah.
Some
of the sex scenes are very I don't know, Country Women's Association approved. Let's say that, because
a lot of scones involved.
A lot of outback romance.
Anyway, It's wonderful, and thank you so much to both of you.
It's great to be here,
being on the show, and that insight. I just love it so much. Before we get to our first guest, I did want to do a little shout out to the amazing Alyssa Healey, who has become pretty much Australia's, well, she's one of our most successful cricketers.
Incredible.
She has broken Adam Gilchrist's record for the most runs in a Cricket World Cup final. What an amazing player. And she's just a superstar. And I love that these women, they support and each other as a team, but they're obviously inspiring a whole generation of girls to pick up a cricket bat.
It's amazing, though, with women's sports still, how little of it we know about. I mean, our Australian women's cricket team are extraordinary and unbeatable, basically. And it's only been maybe the last couple of months I even knew they really were a force.
With respect, though, you're not a sports journo.
No, I'm not a sports journo, but I just mean that they don't get the coverage.
It's true.
That they deserve. But that's changing, so that's good. Yeah.
So congratulations to Alyssa Healey. All righty, let's get into our first guest. Well, I have to say that I have really admired this woman with great passion. She is the sort of person that I think when I grow up I want to be just like Jane Carrow. She is the feminist voice that's been carried along by some very powerful insight, and she's, I think, a natural activist and someone who's very willing to speak out where other people perhaps aren't. You would see her on The Drum, Sunrise, ABC Radio, the list goes on. She's a Walkley Award winning author as well, and she joins us now as the independent running for the Senate. Good morning, Jane Carrow.
Good morning. I'm not actually an independent. I'm running for a small party called Reason Australia. And you would know Reason in Victoria, particularly because Fiona Patten has been an effective member in the Victorian Upper House. And she, of course, is the one sitting member at the moment for Reason Australia. But we're running a whole lot of candidates in the forthcoming election, some in the lower house in Victoria, but most in the Senate. And I'm running in New South Wales for the Senate here. Well, the Senate in Canberra, but as the New South Wales representative of Reason Australia.
Jane, you have such an extraordinary career, so successful in so many different areas. It feels like quite a sacrifice to put your hand up for this.
I don't know if it's a sacrifice. It's kind of a whole new adventure is the way I look at it, and a big kind of learning curve. But it's also that I felt passionately, I suppose, that it was time I put my money where my mouth is. I mean, I have been, I suppose, activist and being active in the sidelines, but this seems to me like such a pivotal election. You know, we've got really wicked problems facing us. Climate change, of course, is the existential one, and we've just had more news from the IPCC, their third report dropped this morning, that we've got until 2025, it's 2022, 2025 to actually turn around the increase of carbon emissions in our atmosphere. This is urgent. We have to do it now. And we know we have a current government that is, if it does anything about the climate, it is dragged into it kicking and screaming. It does not want to take action. And we would have to say that for the last 10 years, various iterations of the Liberal government has done everything they can to delay Australia taking action on climate change. So I just felt like I've got two grandchildren. If I want to look them in the face and say, I did everything I could to help make sure that the planet I leave to you is at least livable. Okay, it won't be in as good a state as the planet my grandparents left to me, and what a profound failure of our generation that is. But nevertheless, at least I will be able to look at them and say I did absolutely everything I could. And I just hope every voter out there feels the same way when they look at their own children and grandchildren and wonder what life's going to be like in 2060 if we don't move and move now.
Oh, I love that passion, because certainly I feel enraged that that it seems those in power don't care about their own children in that way.
It is, well, they're in denial, which is a terrible strategy. Denial is a terrible strategy in life. It's a terrible strategy in every area of anything, and it's particularly terrible if you're a government, because the problem with denial is eventually reality will bite you in the bum. Because if it's happening, whether you believe in it or not, whether you're prepared to face the truth of it or not. Any one of us who's had a lousy partner and who was in denial about that fact for some time knows just how big a pile of poo you can get yourself in by not facing reality when it hits you in the face. Well, it's a lot worse when it's the entire planet that's going down the toilet. So, we've got to get these deniers out of office, out of power, out of the media. Go. You are in the way, and we have the answers. We can fix this. We know what to do. We have the money to do it. We just need the political and the institutional will to do it. There are whole new opportunities out there for business. They've been champing at the bit to get into the green economy for a decade, but government has literally stood in their way. I mean, this is supposed to be a pro-government party, a pro-business party. Only certain kinds of businesses comes out of the ground.
Well put.
I think we need more in the world. And I wonder, Jane, in your experience as an author, how you would like the next few months to play out, if you were to have your author hat on to write, the rest of this story in the next few months.
Well, of course, I come from behind, Peter Van Onselen on Twitter just a week ago said that I had no hope, in his humble opinion. So obviously, if I was a novelist, you'd write that as obviously I come racing, through. So let's hope that happens. But real life, unfortunately, doesn't always work out the way novels perhaps are constructed. So I'm doing everything I can, and I've got a really hard-working, mostly volunteer team that are absolutely working their guts out to get me into the Senate, because it's really great if, as the polls seem to indicate, we get a progressive, and particularly progressive in terms of climate change, women's rights, public infrastructure, integrity, all those things that are so top of mind for people now. It's great if we get a progressive House of Reps, but if we have a reactionary Senate full of, people who are still climate deniers, anti-women's rights, privatisers, wazoo, nothing is going to change. So while it's a really big ask to try and get the final Senate seat in a state like New South Wales, or indeed in Victoria, because of the way the quotas work and the way the number of votes you have to get, it's really important that we actually get a progressive Senate as well as a progressive House of Representatives if we want to make a real difference and start to take the action we need to take so very badly to make Australia the country it has the potential to be, a forward-thinking, progressive, net exporter of renewable energy. There's so many jobs and opportunities just waiting to be grasped. If we could just get the dead hand of vested interests of fossil fuel people off our necks, frankly.
Jane, I love it. I love that you've got the passion, and I think you're obviously at that point in your life where you're like, well, what have I got to lose? So that's a good thing. But can I ask you, what was it about the Reason Party that made you decide that they were the ones you were going to join in with?
Well, the first and simplest answer to that is they rang me up and asked me.
Oh, well, that's good. Easy.
Easy. But then I did my due diligence and I looked into them quite carefully, because they're a relatively new party. They're an amalgamation of Fiona Patton's original Sex Party and the Voluntary Euthanasia Party. But basically what I saw, I really liked. Their policies and my beliefs pretty much straight down the line, tick, 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 tick. But also they have a real commitment, and this is what swayed me, is to evidence-based policy making, informed by experts, the people who've studied it all their lives, or the people who actually work in the sector, those people who actually know what's happening and know what needs to be done. Not consultants, not bureaucrats, experts. Informed by experts that aims to minimise harm, reduce suffering, and enhance people's lives without being influenced by ideology or belief of any kind. including religious. In other words, let's look reality in the face and do what needs to be done. I know it's a radical idea. Who could ever have thought of doing that? But that's what the Labour Party stands for, hence the name.
You know what I love?
Use your noggin.
Well, this is what I love that you bring also, Jane, which I think comes with women over a certain age. I turned 50 this year, and I've been very vocal about the fact that I can feel my no bullshit muscle coming in hard, right? And
we've put up with enough by the time we're 50.
It's true, and I can see you in the Senate just taking no prisoners, just speaking the truth in the same way that we see so many of independents, Jackie Lambie and the like, Zali Steggall, some incredible women who are willing to actually speak truth. Because you're not beholden to a party in the same way. But I think that you are embodying a power that middle-aged women really step into.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm not middle-aged. I'm not going to live to be 130. But I am definitely in the latter years of, I'm in the youth of my old age, I like to say. And I do think that the older you get, in a way, the more impatient you become, because you realise that you've only got X amount of time to actually do the things, change the things that you have cared about all your lives. So I think there is a real head of steam up amongst women above a certain age. I see it in young women too, which is so wonderful. I'm so impressed by young women like Grace Tame, Brittany Higgins, Saxon Mullins, Chanel Contos, Mahalia, Greta Thunberg. I mean, there's so many young women who are picking up with the same sort of urgency and take no prisoners attitude. And that's such a change, because young women, when I was a young woman, were much more deferential. They had much less confidence. They were much more easily undermined. I was a real weirdo when I was a young woman. Now I seem to have a lot more in common with my peers than I did back then, because yes, they got layered in bullshit all the way through their lives, and eventually you turn around and go, actually, I've been sold a pup. This is all crap. Everything I was told that I could rely on in my life has not done so. I mean, we only have to look at the trajectory of women over 55, fastest growing group amongst the homeless. So many of them so many of them who were the good girls when I was growing up, who did what they were told by male society, by religious leaders, by politicians. Oh, don't you worry about a career, marry, have children, and you'll have a lovely life. Well, what a crock of shit that turned out to be. They're the girls who are currently facing homelessness. Not bolshy feminists like me, no, but the good girls who did what they were told. I am so angry and moved by the situation of so many of the women that I grew up with and the dire straits they find themselves in, because they put caring for others ahead of their right to earn an income, as they were told to do. And so no wonder they are furious. Older women are a force to be reckoned with. Go and look at all the volunteers for the independents. Go and look at all the people who helped Zali Steggall get elected in 2019. So many of them, older women. We are invisible, we are discounted, but do that at your peril.
Jane, this has been a battle cry that I've needed. I'm fascinated here because I was a good girl, and I've only learned to be outspoken in the last few years. I've kind of realised how much I silenced myself. So you were always an outspoken person. If this is the case, how can you help those of us who are a little fearful of speaking out?
Well, the first thing to do is to not blame yourself. You just said you silenced yourself. You didn't. You were told to be silent, and you were told that if you were silent, you would get rewarded because people would like you and you would be approved of. And when you look at the dominant culture, which is still white and male, you make a decision. I've got to survive. I've got to get through the world. Those guys are at the top and they've got all the power. So lots of women try to fit around the space that they can get around that, huge, thick layer of men, as Laura Lissy calls it. And frankly, that's completely understandable. That is not because you're weak or stupid or anything else. That's how you were brought up. to behave. And I'm not blaming your parents either. Elizabeth Broderick said it best. She's the ex-sex discrimination commissioner. She said, misogyny is like asbestos in the walls. We breathe it in. So we're all trained in this way. Now, I was lucky. My mother was an outspoken feminist. My father thought the world of women, and he adored my mother. As far as he's concerned, they're still both alive. They're having their joint 90th birthday party on Sunday. As far as my father's concerned, my mother is the smartest person he's ever known. He's quite right. But that kind of background was a gift, and it was rare. So don't blame yourself. We internalise the humiliation that's meted out to us in a male-dominated world, the lack of respect, the lack of recognition of our experiences, perspectives and ideas. So let go of the self-criticism. And remember, you're an imperfect person. And the thing I did learn was that there is no right way to be a woman. And I think when you're young, you try terribly hard to find that magic trick which will make you approved of as a woman. What is it you have to do? There's actually no right way to be a woman. You can only be wrong. That's all you can be as a woman. So you may as well be wrong entirely in your own way and not worry about it. Trying to be liked and approved of is a terrible way to live your life. What you want is to be respected and heard. And some people won't like you, and lots of people won't approve of you. So what? Who cares? That says a lot more about them than it does about you. Once you can absorb that and really start to believe it viscerally, and it's not an act of will, it takes time. Forgive yourself when you fail. That's the biggest thing women should do, forgive themselves and another. We're constantly criticising ourselves and one another. Wrong enemy, wrong enemy. We're not the problem. And we don't all have to agree, and we don't all have to look after each other all the time. We're allowed to be human, we're allowed to be flawed, we're allowed to be lazy, we're allowed to be flatulent, we're allowed to be boring, just like men are. And we're still allowed to get ahead and be respected.
Thank you for the permission to be flatulent.
Flatulent and boring. Which that's my favourite Saturday night.
I think they go together very well, don't they?
Oh, Jane, it's so lovely to hear you give that incredibly important pep talk. I'm taking that into my day. Thank you so much. Thank you for standing for the Senate. We wish you well. I can't let you go also without acknowledging I've just started reading your latest book, The Mother, which I love. I'm just a little way in, but it's a really beautiful book, and it's obviously you're someone who's raised daughters, because you are writing the relationship between mother and daughter so beautifully.
Thank you. Fortunately, my own daughters have read the book, and we still have a reasonable relationship, which is enormously relieving to me.
No, it's a really beautiful book, and I haven't got into the heart of it yet, and I know that it's a very important book because it's about coercive control and the terrible crisis that we're in as far as violence against women is concerned. So it's a really important book, and I really encourage you to read it. And thanks for writing it, Jane.
Well, thank you, and thank you for speaking about it so positively. It's another reason why I want to get into the Senate to do something about women's safety and the way we do not take women's suffering, pain and psychological trauma seriously.
Amazing. Jane, all the best. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to have you on another time because, yeah, as I say, you're the feminist I hope to grow up to be one day.
Anna, be your own kind.
Thanks, Jane. You take care.
With my respiratory issues, I know I have to quit smoking. And quitting before I'm 40 means I'll live up to 9 years longer. What will your future hold when you quit? Make your next quit attempt at Chemist Warehouse.
Broad Radio. Talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis? We've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Right, look. It's just you and I. The magic of broad radio is that our middle person, Jo, has disappeared. Anyway, how about that? So, Jen, we've had a few people contact us through the socials, which I do love about being live. Who we got? We've got Stacey Williams says, "Go Jo, flexibility all the way." Well, as you can see, that's exactly what's happening. The no shade on the CWA, says Sarah Jane Flaherty. They'll be the women who ensure we can feed, clothe and shelter ourselves when the apocalypse comes. No shade on the CWA at all. I was just saying the sexy scenes in some of those outback country books, I'm sure, are CWA approved. Anyway, let's move on to our second guest today. Now, the thing on Broad Radio is we do try and find women from, well, not even women, sometimes we let a few guys on, don't we? But we like to try and find people who are doing things that are quite interesting and extraordinary, and our next guest is no exception. She is playing Cinderella in the new Roger and Hammerstein production of Cinderella, but it's a bit of a 21st century sort of version of the fairy tale, isn't it? And she's kind of shaking things up. So let's welcome to Broad Radio one of Australia's most promising musical stars. Now I'm going to hope I'm going to say her name right. Shubshri Kandiah. Did I say it right?
Shubshri, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here.
Oh, look, how have you been being a theatre person in the last couple of years? Have you been just practising in your bedroom at home to make sure you're keeping your talents up?
Pretty much. I think my neighbours were pretty sick of me in 2020.
I think your neighbours are really lucky. Imagine getting like this quality of singing as opposed to like someone with a kid learning on a drum kit for the first, 6 months or whatever. I think they should count their blessings, Shubshri, that they get to hear your wonderful voice.
I don't know about that. When I'm practicing, sometimes some things don't come out very nice. But it's definitely really lovely to be back on stage and in rehearsals and feeling like theatre really has come back.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Tell us about, so you're playing Cinderella. How is this going to be a different production to, say, all the Disney versions of the Princess Cinderella that we've seen previously?
Yeah, well, I think in this version of Cinderella, she is no longer the damsel in distress that we remember her to be. She's very much a woman in control of her own destiny, and she creates the path that she wants to follow. And I think that that's really empowering, and it's the version of Cinderella that we need to see today.
That's so great. How do you feel as a performer that you've created the path that you've been, designed to follow? Like, because I feel like you've done amazing things. You're only 26 and you've already played Jasmine in the Australian production of Aladdin, which I just love. I was listening to A Whole New World this morning, just preparing to talk to you, wondering what it must feel like to be someone who's sung A Whole New World more than the average person.
It's incredibly exciting to have been doing all these things, I think, as well, because it's not something that I ever thought, this would be my job. I think, maybe just thinking very kind of narrow-mindedly, when I was in high school, I thought, right, so a job, I've got to be a doctor or a teacher, or, I had no idea that something like this could be a full-time job. And to say that it is, it's honestly more than a dream. I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life. It's really exciting, and I love what I do.
How did the love of musical theatre come to you? Were you a musical theatre kid were you a musical theatre kid, or was it something that came to you a little bit later in life?
I grew up performing, kind of doing a lot more Indian dance and singing. I think that love of, singing around the house and doing those things kind of came from my mum. But I think I kind of fell into music theatre a little bit more at school. When I was 15, I think I saw my first professional musical theatre show at the Capitol Theatre, and I thought that's what I want to do. And I didn't take that thought seriously just because I didn't think that I could do it as a job. But I watched it and I was amazed at everything these people were doing, and I thought, I want to do that too. And yeah, so I guess it was later in life that I kind of decided that that was the path that I wanted to take.
You didn't have to get a day job, as they say.
Well, you could be a princess.
A day job as a princess.
As a princess.
Yeah. I wonder, you just say you saw something for the first time when you were 15 and it blew your mind and you thought, oh my God, I need to do it. I think we all have that moment where there has been something on stage that we've seen that's really blown us away. Mine was Les Mis. I think I've seen that like 5 times and can sing all the songs and, annoy the neighbours. But how is it though as a performer? Because as an audience member, you go and you have that one experience and it's amazing and it's magical. But if you have to do that how many times a week? 5, 6, 7 times a week? How do you keep that 8? How do you keep that magic alive every time you step onto the stage?
I think because we have a resident director who is constantly watching the show, constantly making sure we're being consistent and we're getting notes, every day after the show. There's always something to work on for the next time, and I don't think I've ever felt bored with the role. I think every time you go on stage and do something, somebody on stage might change something and that completely changes your performance. So every time you're just finding new things, and that's really exciting to feel like you're never fully done with the role. There's always more to explore. There's always more to give. So I'd like to think that if you saw a performance of mine in January and you came back to the show in May, that things might have changed and shifted and more has grown with the character. And I think that that's like the beauty and the joy of live theatre for me.
With playing Cinderella, what are you looking forward to most about this experience? Like, are there particular things about different roles that you really love about, depending on who you're playing at a different time?
Yeah, well, I think for this particular role, I love that we're presented with a princess that isn't perfect. She shows a lot of insecurities that I think we've never really seen in a character before. It's something that I've really related to. A feeling of not being good enough just as you are, and her finding through this show that it's not about how you dress, it's not about what you look like, it's about who you are as a person and the kindness that you spread, and that's what makes you beautiful. I love that message, and I think it would be lovely to share that as well, especially in the times that we're in right now, spreading kindness.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful.
Spreading a little. Isn't it funny though that kindness still surprises us?
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about us if kindness surprises us.
When people do kind things, you're like, oh, isn't that nice? Well, that's what we're aiming for. Can I just ask you before we let you go, you're from Perth. Now, so many performers of music and theatre come out of Perth. What is it? Is it the small pond, big fish thing? What is it about Western Australia that can create that scene?
Gosh, I honestly don't know. I do actually know a lot of performers from Perth. I guess because WAPA is such a hub as well, like people end up going to Perth to be part of that. I actually didn't study at WAPA. I studied at the Queensland Conservatorium of Music, which was awesome, and I had a great time there. And I think for me, I needed to leave Perth to kind of find myself a bit more, because Perth was my like little bubble of security. So kind of moving to Queensland was a huge shift for me. And I think, once you move out of home, that you just really have to grow up quickly. And I think I got a lot of opportunities kind of being over east more so than what I had in Perth. But Perth will always hold a special place in my heart, and I love it. Love going back there.
Well, if you were there in the last couple of years, you might be sick of it because you couldn't go anywhere else. Okay, so where are we performing? Where are you performing Cinderella, and where can people actually see you on the boards in real life?
Yeah, well, we open the show in Melbourne at the Regent Theatre, and then after that we go to QPAC in Brisbane, and after that we are in Sydney at the Lyric Theatre.
All right. Wow.
That's so exciting. Thank you so much for taking the time to share a little piece of your happily ever after story with us. It's just been so delightful.
That's great. All right. We'll have more Broad Radio after this. Oh dear. Oh, what happens when you have a frog in your throat and you're on Broad Radio Live? This is not something I have to usually deal with. Excuse me.
Yeah. Shubshri, if there was a frog here, she could kiss the frog and the frog would become a prince.
Imagine.
A very different episode of Broad Radio today.
we let her go too soon. Now, Jen, we did discover you when I was watching your show on iView, Chopsticks or Fork. Mm-hmm. I always get it around the wrong way, fork or chopsticks. No,
you
chopsticks
can use both.
Well,
yes.
Isn't that true? But I think chopsticks or fork it's like when you choose, do you say mum or dad or mum? I think chopsticks or fork goes better, doesn't it?
Yes, the chopsticks are definitely the mother in the relationship,
absolutely.
I think. Yes.
And I absolutely love that show because I think everyone does have a connection with a Chinese restaurant in their past. As Australians, we seem to have this real connection to our local Chinese restaurant. And many years ago when I started in radio, I lived in two country towns, and the Chinese restaurant was a big feature of our life. We would have a Friday lunch all together, everybody in the radio station, and have the Chinese curried chicken and the Chinese sausage. And I was blown away by the flavours. It's not the same in the city though, is it?
The food is a little bit different. I think, in the cities of, like, say, Melbourne, Sydney and Queensland now, I think we see a lot of variety of Chinese foods, foods from different regions in China, like from Sichuan or Shanghai or Xi'an, or which is very different from the Australian Chinese food, the Cantonese style food that you get in the country towns. So for me, having not spent much time in regional Australia before we travelled, it was my first time, the way that it was, a lot of country people's first time when they went when they were 6 or 7, to see things like prawn cutlets and what else had I never seen before?
Prawn toasts?
I'd seen prawn toast before, but I'd never seen a prawn cutlet before. And when they came out, I was like, ooh, it's chicken. I don't know why I thought it was chicken, but the food, there's a sense of nostalgia with the food. So I love, being able to get a sweet and sour pork in such a classically good, wholesome way wherever you are in Australia, in a small country town. So there is definitely a fondness, I think, that people have in their hearts for their local Chinese.
I'm always blown away by how many things can be on the menu from one small kitchen. That's amazing. Yes. But you also have a new project happening which revolves around food as well. Tell us about that. It's always good to work with food because you're guaranteed a meal. And there's a theatre project called Double Delicious, which I'm lucky to be part of. And it's actually a theatre show that's toured around different parts of Australia already. And it involves 5 storytellers who all have a special, personal and very sumptuous story to tell about a dish. And so what happens when you go to see the show is that you get to hear the story, see the story performed quite theatrically, and then you actually get to taste the food. You get to eat the food that everyone talks about. So, for example, Benjamin Law is in the show, and he talks about a food that's kind of really significant to his identity as a person with Hong Kong Chinese background. Yep. So he makes these beautiful wontons that you get to eat. So does he make them for the entire audience?
I should clarify that he's not sitting there folding all the wontons by hand and then cooking them. Yeah. So he will do some kind, like a demonstration of sorts, but there is a full catering team who then bring out the food, and that in itself is quite theatrical. Like, for example, Heather Jong here, she is a Korean chef and cooking teacher, and she tells a gorgeous story about meeting her dad for the first time when she was 9 years old, and she makes a kimchi dish that's significant to her and her Korean heritage, and then you get to eat the kimchi and the kimchi stew that she makes. So I'm one of the storytellers who's joined the cast last. I'm actually replacing, this is the wrong word because nobody can replace, Elizabeth Chong, who's now 91 years old, who you know from Good Morning Australia, and for teaching so many generations of Australians how to cook Chinese food. So Elizabeth's not touring with the show because we're on the road for 6 weeks. And so I'm coming in to tell a story kind of based on my experience during COVID, where I taught myself to make a dessert that my mum had always made, because in Sydney there was a period where we couldn't visit our families, as you would understand very well.
Melbourne
in Victoria.
As well, yep.
And so I wanted to eat this Chinese dessert called snow fungus sweet soup.
Ooh, it's got a good name.
It does have a good name. Not every dessert has fungus, but this one does. It's kind of like the clear white one that springs back to life when you put it in the water, the way that like black fungus is sometimes in stir fries. So yeah, I just had to learn how to make it for myself, and it's a story about kind of recognizing the various sweetnesses that we have in life, and it's the final dish, so you do get a dessert as one of the dishes. So yeah,
I do love that, because I struggle with I think that's why I liked your TV show, was because I could kind of identify the flavors as it went through. But shows like MasterChef and stuff I always find a bit tricky, because you can't taste the things. You can see them, but you can't smell them or taste them. And that then is like the bit that's lacking in the experience.
Yeah.
So I love that you've brought that in to the storytelling.
Yeah, and it's really nice, because what happens is you come into the theatre, you're seated with like 8 or 10 people around a big round table, you know, so there's all these tables everywhere, and you basically leave as friends with all the other people on the table, because you've all experienced the emotions of these 5 stories and eaten together. And it's something so powerful about being able to share a meal, which is definitely a lesson that I've learned during COVID, is how much I love now the opportunity to sit opposite someone and share a meal with them. It's just so special, but so underrated before COVID times, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that does sound lovely. When is that touring around, and where can people find it?
So we start in Wyong in May, on the 11th of May, and then we go to Wollongong, Bunjil Place, Narrawarren in Victoria, Ballarat in Victoria, and we go to Wagga, and then we end at the concourse in Chatswood up in Sydney. So it's 6 weeks, starts on the 9th of May, and we would love to feed you with stories and food. So please come along.
Oh, Jen, you actually are making my stomach grumble. I'm hoping the microphone isn't going to pick that up. Oh, dear. Well, our final guest today on Broad Radio is a woman who is helping to spread the word about something that, it's probably something that a lot of us have never really thought about. And I love that there's these things that pop up in your life and you think, how did I not ever consider that was a really big issue for a lot of people? Jen Dohrmann is joining us. Jen Dohrmann, not Glenn. I've just changed her gender there on her. Is joining us. She is the CEO of Women's Sport Australia. Hi, Jen. Welcome to Broad Radio.
Hi. Thank you for having me this morning.
We've got a double Jen. I like this. This is good. Now, tell us about the project, the Sports Bra project, because I actually just found you from doing a bit of a Google, and as I started to read about this, I thought, this is an amazing thing, and it's fairly new in Australia. Talk us through it.
Yeah, definitely. So my role, I'm the president of Women's Sport Australia, and we came across the Sports Bra project as an organisation that was set up in America and has been working with multiple different countries around the world to really shine a light on the fact that women, not everyone has access to a crucial piece of equipment that they need to be able to feel comfortable to play sport, which is in fact a sports bra. And they have done amazing work which really has been focused around the area of people, when you buy your own sports bra, buying another one that you can then donate to the Sports Bra project, and then they will work through donating that to a community, someone in a community in need, so that they can really repurpose that bra and make sure that someone else has access to sport. So we love that concept at Women's Sport Australia, and there are some great advocates here in Australia for bringing what was being done to the US into Australia. And with the network that we've created through Women's Sport Australia, we have become sort of the shop front of the Australian arm of the Sports Bra project, and we just recently launched on International Women's Day, the 8th of March, And really the coverage and all of the information that we've gotten about the project so far has been so fantastic. So what we're really encouraging people to do is to donate sports bras, new sports bras that we can then receive and look at a way that we can pass this on to a community in need. And one of the big things was we were sort of really wanting to target sort of Indigenous remote communities. But given the recent events of the floods and how many people in sort of New South Wales have lost so many different possessions, we're really looking at rediverting some of our efforts into the flood sort of affected areas at the moment to make sure that people really just do have access to that one crucial thing, a sports bra, to be able to then actually play sport.
That's such a simple but effective way of encouraging people to play sport, which is, as we know, really important for communities and people just developing a good sense of self and healthiness and things like that. I wonder if you could tell us, Jen, a little bit about the impact that it's had in Africa, for example, where this idea was actually founded.
Yeah, so I think the founder of the Sports Bra Project, Sarah, she really was moved by the ability that sort of some simple equipment like a sports bra can really have on different African sort of remote communities, to be able to actually just give them the confidence to start playing sport and to feel like they are going to be supported to actually be able to apply themselves to the game and feel like they're able to actually do something that has traditionally only been reserved for boys. So it's been incredible to see the reach of the different amount of sort of countries and communities. There's 26 countries that the Sports Bra Project has donated different sports bras to, and there's been over 7,000 bras donated, which has really been incredible. We've supported 55 different organisations, and for us at Women's Sport Australia, it was a no-brainer about bringing this great work that's been done overseas into Australia and seeing how we can apply it.
I must say I was a latecomer to sports bras, but they do change your life. Do you have a sports bra?
I don't. I'm not supported. But you definitely give me something to think about how much we can take for granted something that for so many people is as easy as reaching into the underwear drawer to solve a problem. Yep. And for other people, I'm thinking especially of young women who want to play sport but can't play because of something that a lot of us would say is as simple as, being able to go to the shops and pick up something for $30 or $40, How can people best support the support work that you guys do?
I love how much support is going into this.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, on our Women's Sport Australia website, which is www.womenssportaustralia.com.au, there is a page that's dedicated to the Sports Bra Project, and that has information on there about how you can donate bras. So if you've got bras and you want to send them to us, where you can send to. It also has information on running a bra drive. So if you are having a local night, a trivia night, or catching up with sort of friends, perhaps something at your own sports club, you might want to run a drive and encourage everyone to bring a new sports bra that they can donate as part of the project. There's some information about that. And then finally, there's a way that you can actually apply to be a recipient, so that if you are sort of in need and don't have the means to purchase your own sports bra, or of a community that would really benefit from this project, then you can register, so that we do have that continuation of when we're getting the bras donated, that we can actually pass them on to communities in need.
It's also a very personal thing too, which I love. First of all, I thought it was like a second-hand bra thing, because you know how there's the recycling kind of element, and then I read a bit more and I was like, oh no, you can actually write a message on the bra that you donate to someone who's going to receive it. And you're also asking that people buy a bra in their own bra size, so that you get a scope of sizes, which of course, because if everyone just goes out and just picks one off the rack, you might end up with all the same average size, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's having that personal touch and knowing that, everyone is all different shapes and sizes. So, the ask is that if you're buying your own sports bra, or when you are actually wanting to donate to the cause, buying a bra that's in your own size, so that you can then package it up with a little message and make sure that sort of someone just like you has that ability to play sport.
Yeah, I love, again, it's one of those gendered things where you think sports equipment, let's give it to people who need to be helped to move. But of course, most of it is for guys. No, it's not specifically for women. So this is a great initiative. Thanks so much for joining us today to tell us all about it, Jen. And where do we head for the information? We've got the website screenshot just there.
Yep, so just www.womensportaustralia.com.au, and it's just the Sports Bra Project as one of the programs there.
Love it. All right, thanks so much for joining us on Broad Radio today.
Thank you. See you later.
I'm in a new strategy.
Well, this is the show. I tell you what, when you signed up to join us for Broad Radio, Jen, you just really didn't know how it was going to play out. And here we are.
We're at the end of it already. Happy graduation to you today.
Oh, thank you. Happy graduation to you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you join us again for term 2.
Oh, yes. I've packed my books already and covered them with contact. I'll be here.
That's great. Of course, you can listen back to this show and you can grab the podcast wherever you grab your podcast in the next couple of days. But until next time, thanks very much for joining us for Broad Radio, and Jo will be back next week.
Bye for now.
Been together so long we can't